December 19, 1944, 0430 hours, near Stoumont, Belgium. Oberleutnant Friedrich Hartmann stood in the pre-dawn darkness, staring at what his reconnaissance patrol had just discovered. Behind a hastily abandoned American defensive line lay something that would fundamentally challenge everything the Wehrmacht understood about warfare, logistics, and the industrial capacity of their enemy. What the German soldiers found wasn't just supplicit, was a revelation that would shatter their conception of how wars could be fought and won. The contents of these American depots would expose the terrifying truth about the conflict they were losing, not through lack of courage or tactical skill, but through an industrial disparity so vast it rendered German resistance mathematically futile. The German offensive that would become known as the Battle of the Bulge had begun 5 days earlier on December 16, 1944. Operation WWII represented Adolf Hitler's desperate gamble to split Allied forces, capture the port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace in the West. The initial assault achieved tactical surprise, with 3 German armies comprising over 200,000 men, crashing through thinly held American positions in the Ardennes forest. KAMPFGRUPPE Piper, the spearhead formation of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte, Adolf Hitler, had penetrated deepest into American lines under the command of Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper. This battle group consisted of approximately 4,000 men, 600 vehicles, and 100 tanks. Their mission was simple in concept, but brutal in execution. Drive west at maximum speed, seize bridges across the Meuse River, and create chaos in the American rear. By December 18, Kampfgruppe Peiper had advanced nearly 40 miles, leaving destruction in its wake. But the rapid advance had created a critical problem documented in German military records. Fuel consumption had exceeded planning estimates by 300%. The Panther and Tiger tanks, while formidable weapons, consumed gasoline at rates the Wehrmacht's collapsing logistics network could no longer sustain. Each Panther tank required 270 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. Each Tiger II consumed even more, approximately 450 liters. For the same distance. German planning documents captured after the war revealed the offensive's fundamental flaw. Operations planners had calculated that fuel supplies would be sufficient for the first 48 hours only. After that, German forces were expected to capture American fuel depots and use enemy supplies to continue the advance. The entire operation hinged on seizing American logistics infrastructure intact. December 19, 0455 hours. Friedrich Hartmann commanded the advance reconnaissance element of Kampfgruppe Peiper's northern prong. His unit consisted of 3 Panther tanks, 2 half-tracks, and approximately 60 Panzer grenadiers. They had been probing American positions near Stoumont, when suddenly artillery fire had ceased. American units appeared to be withdrawing in disorder, abandoning positions under cover of darkness. At 0512 hours, Hartmann's lead elements discovered why. Behind the American defensive line, concealed in a small valley approximately 800 meters west of Stoumont, lay a forward supply depot that American forces had abandoned during their withdrawal. The discovery was documented in Hartmann's combat report, later recovered from German archives. What Hartmann and his men found in those first moments would be repeated dozens of times across the Ardennes battlefield as German units overran American positions, but the initial reaction remained consistent across all accounts. Absolute disbelief at the scale of material abundance. The depot covered approximately 4 hectares. Hartmann's report, dictated to his operations officer at 0630 hours that morning, attempted to catalogue what they had discovered. The accounting revealed a logistical reality that contradicted everything German soldiers had experienced in their own military service. Fuel supplies included 200,000 liters of gasoline stored in standard 200-liter drums stacked in organized rows. Additional diesel fuel approximately 50,000 liters stored separately. Aviation gasoline, 30,000 liters marked for air support operations. Specialized lubricants, antifreeze compounds, and hydraulic fluids in quantities that suggested American forces treated such materials as unlimited. Food supplies occupied 3 large tents and multiple outdoor storage areas. The inventory staggered German soldiers who had been subsisting on reduced rations since the summer of 1944. Cases of canned meat, thousands of units. Packaged coffee, genuine coffee, not the chicory substitute German troops had been drinking for years. chocolate bars, cigarettes, and sugar in quantities that seemed incomprehensible to men whose homeland was experiencing severe shortages under Allied blockade. Medical supplies filled an entire tent, sulfur drugs, morphine, plasma, bandages, surgical instruments, all in abundance. German medical units had been rationing such supplies for months, performing triage based partly on availability of medicines. Here lay enough medical supplies to support a field hospital for months of operations. Ammunition storage revealed the American approach to combat logistics. Artillery shells for 105 mm and 155 mm howitzers stacked thousands of rounds deep. Small arms ammunition, millions of rounds in wooden crates, marked with production dates from just weeks earlier. Hand grenades, rifle grenades, mortar rounds, all present in quantities that suggested American forces expected to expend ammunition freely without concern for supply limitations. Vehicle maintenance supplies included replacement parts for trucks, jeeps, and tanks. Entire engines sat crated and ready for installation. Transmissions, track links, road wheels for Sherman tanks, tires, hundreds of them in various sizes. German maintenance crews had been cannibalizing disabled vehicles for parts since 1943. American forces apparently replaced entire assemblies rather than repaired damaged components. Personal equipment for soldiers lay scattered in supply tents, winter uniforms, proper cold weather gear that German troops desperately needed, boots, multiple pairs per soldier apparently, in various sizes, sleeping bags, something German infantry had never been issued, tents, stoves, cooking equipment manufactured to standards that emphasized soldier comfort as much as functionality. Communications equipment included radio sets more advanced than anything in Wehrmacht service, telephone wire, thousands of meters of it, batteries, vacuum tubes, replacement parts for electronic equipment. The Americans had apparently built redundancy into every system, ensuring communications could be maintained, regardless of equipment losses. But perhaps most shocking was what the discovery revealed about American replacement cycles. Manufacturing dates on equipment and supplies indicated most items had been produced within the previous 3 months. Some ammunition bore production stamps from November 1944, just weeks before its capture. The Americans weren't just maintaining supply lines across the Atlantic Ocean, they were delivering recently manufactured goods to forward combat units. As routine operations, Hartmann's men began immediately transferring fuel to their vehicles. Panzer Grenadiers broke into food supplies, stuffing pockets with chocolate and cigarettes. The activity occurred not from lack of discipline, but from genuine need. These German soldiers had been advancing for days on reduced rations, their fuel gauges showing critical levels, their vehicles desperately requiring maintenance supplies that German logistics could no longer provide. At 07:20 hours, Hartmann radioed his findings to Kampfrupp Piper headquarters. The response came within minutes. Secure the depot. Transfer maximum possible fuel and supplies. Prepare for transport of captured material to rear areas. Similar orders were being issued across the Ardennes as German units encountered American supply infrastructure. German forces continued discovering American supply depots throughout the Ardennes offensive. A pattern emerged that military analysts would study for decades. The captures weren't isolated incidents, but systematic revelations of the industrial chasm separating the two military forces. Hauptmann Werner Sternberg, supply officer for the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitler, compiled detailed reports of captured American material during the offensive's first week. His documentation, recovered from German military archives in the 1970s, provided statistical analysis that revealed the shocking disparity between German and American logistics systems. Between December 16 and December 23, 1944, German forces in the Ardennes captured or discovered 47 American supply depots of varying sizes. Sternberg's analysis categorized these into 3 types: forward supply points like the one Hartmann discovered, battalion-level depots supporting 500 to 800 men, and larger regimental supply bases. Even the smallest forward points contained more material than comparable German facilities. The fuel discovery shocked German quartermasters most profoundly. Total captured American gasoline exceeded 2.8 million liters. According to Sternberg's calculations, this quantity represented more fuel than the entire 6th Panzer Army had been allocated for the offensive's first week. American forces had apparently abandoned more fuel in their retreat than Germany had assembled for its largest Western offensive since 1940. But quantity alone didn't tell the complete story. Quality differences revealed even more disturbing truths about comparative industrial capacity. American gasoline bore octane ratings of 80 or higher, suitable for high-performance aircraft engines. German synthetic fuel production, struggling under Allied bombing, was producing gasoline with octane ratings of 87 for aviation use and as low as 74 for ground vehicles. The Wehrmacht had been forced to reduce engine compression ratios in new tank designs because fuel quality couldn't support high-performance engines. Food supply comparisons revealed equally stark contrasts. American ration specifications, documented in captured supply manifests, allocated 4,758 calories per soldier per day when in combat operations. German rations by December 1944 provided approximately 2,500 calories daily, and actual field conditions often reduced this further. American soldiers were being fed at levels that sustained peak physical performance. German soldiers were gradually experiencing significant nutritional deficiencies while fighting. The American ration, one of several types German soldiers discovered, contained canned meat, biscuits, chocolate, coffee, sugar, cigarettes, and chewing gum. Total weight, approximately 800 grams. German iron rations, issued for emergency situations, consisted of hard bread and canned meat, totaling perhaps 400 grams. American emergency rations exceeded German standard field rations in both quantity and quality. December 20, 1944, Oberst, commanding the 5th Fallschirmjäger Division, ordered systematic inventory of captured American supplies at a regimental depot his paratroopers had overrun near Wiltz, Luxembourg. The depot had supported elements of the 28th Infantry Division before their withdrawal under German pressure. Heilmann's inventory, recorded in division records, documented 150,000 individual meal rations, enough to feed his entire division for nearly 2 weeks. Medical supplies included 40,000 doses of penicillin, a drug German forces had never successfully manufactured for military use. Cigarettes numbered over 200,000, along with 50,000 chocolate bars. The depot also contained 3,000 wool blankets, 2,000 pairs of winter boots, and 500 complete winter uniform sets. But the most disturbing discovery came from manufacturing documentation. Every supply crate, every equipment item, every ammunition box bore stamps indicating production date and location. Heilmann's staff analyzed these markings and reached a conclusion that challenged their understanding of warfare. Most supplies had been manufactured between September and November 1944. They had been produced in America, shipped across the Atlantic Ocean, moved through European supply networks, and delivered to forward combat units within weeks of manufacture. German war production, by comparison, had collapsed into crisis by late 1944. Albert Speer's production ministry records, examined by historians after the war, documented the catastrophic impact of Allied bombing. German ammunition production had peaked in September 1944 at approximately 1.2 million artillery shells monthly across all calibers. By December, production had fallen to 750,000 shells monthly, a 37% reduction in 3 months. American ammunition production for the same period exceeded 2.5 million artillery shells monthly. According to U.S. War Production Board statistics, American industry wasn't just out German factories, it was simultaneously supplying multiple theaters of operation across the Pacific and Europe, while German production struggled to maintain operations. The vehicle production comparison revealed perhaps the starkest contrast. In 1944, American industry manufactured approximately 17,500 Sherman tanks. German industry that same year produced approximately 6,000 Panther tanks and 1,000 Tiger tanks, totaling 7,000 main battle tanks. The United States was building more than twice as many tanks, while also producing thousands of aircraft, ships, and other military equipment at scales Germany couldn't approach. But German soldiers discovering American depots couldn't access production statistics. They could only see the evidence before them, and that evidence told a story of industrial disparity that made German victory mathematically impossible. The supplies they captured represented American routine logistics, not special accumulations or emergency reserves. This is how American forces operated normally. the discoveries in American supply depots triggered a cascade of realizations throughout the German military hierarchy that extended far beyond tactical considerations. What began as opportunistic acquisition of enemy supplies evolved into a profound psychological crisis as German soldiers and officers confronted the mathematical impossibility of victory against such industrial supremacy. December 23, 1944, Oberst Remmer, commanding officer of the Führer Begleit Brigade, convened an emergency meeting with his senior staff officers at his headquarters near Bass. The meeting's minutes, preserved in captured German documents, revealed discussions that would have been considered defeatist just weeks earlier but now reflected unavoidable reality. Remmer's intelligence officer presented analysis of captured American supplies discovered across the brigade's operational area. In 7 days of offensive operations, the brigade had overrun or discovered 12 American supply points. Total captured material included 380,000 liters of fuel, 45,000 rations, 12,000 artillery shells, and miscellaneous equipment valued at over 2 million Reichsmarks. Yet, despite these captures, the brigade's own supply situation remained critical. The paradox was devastating. German forces had captured more supplies than their logistics network could have delivered in 3 weeks of normal operations, but American forces had abandoned these supplies as routine losses during tactical withdrawals. The Americans were losing more through retreat than Germany could deliver through its entire supply chain. Major Heinrich Remmer's operations officer articulated what many were thinking but few dared state openly. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an industrial system that treats warfare as a production problem. Every American soldier represents tons of support infrastructure. Every German soldier represents diminishing returns on collapsing capacity. The comment reflected a fundamental shift in German military thinking. Wehrmacht doctrine since 1939 had emphasized tactical excellence and operational skill as force multipliers against numerically superior enemies. The assumption had been that German tactical superiority would offset Allied material advantages, but the supply depots revealed that material advantages on this scale overwhelmed tactical skill entirely. General Lieutenant Fritz Gumner, Chief of Staff for the 6th Panzer Army, compiled comprehensive analysis of American logistics for Field Marshal Walter Model on December 24. The report, recovered from German archives, represented one of the most thorough German assessments of American industrial capacity produced during the war. Rigmer's analysis calculated that captured American supplies in the Ardennes represented approximately 4% of total American logistics infrastructure supporting operations in Western Europe. The depots German forces had overrun were forward supply points, not main bases. American main supply depots located in France contained perhaps 20 times the material German forces had captured, and these depots were continuously replenished from ocean ports receiving shipments from America. The mathematics were crushing. If forward American depots contained supplies German forces considered strategic reserves, and if these forward depots represented just 4% of American theater logistics, then American total supply capacity exceeded German capacity by ratios that made meaningful comparison impossible. Germany wasn't losing a war of supply margins. Germany was losing a war of different industrial magnitudes entirely. But Schragemer's report went further. Analyzing American supply philosophy revealed through captured documents and observed practices. American logistics operated on a push system where supplies were delivered to units continuously, whether requested or not. German logistics operated on a pull system where units requested supplies that higher headquarters then attempted to deliver based on availability. The American system assumed supply abundance and emphasized maintaining constant forward availability. The German system assumed supply scarcity and emphasized careful resource allocation. These weren't just different approaches to the same problem, they reflected fundamentally different industrial realities. America could afford to push supplies forward continuously because industrial capacity made abundance routine. Germany had to ration carefully because industrial capacity couldn't meet demand. Christmas Eve 1944, German soldiers throughout the Ardennes celebrated their holiday amid American supplies. They ate American rations, smoked American cigarettes, and wore American winter clothing taken from depots. The bitter irony pervaded every celebration. They were surviving on enemy supplies, while their own nation experienced severe shortages and struggled to maintain war production. Unteroffizier Hans Wagner, a squad leader with the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, wrote to his wife on December 24th, "We had Christmas dinner from American supplies today. Real coffee, canned meat, chocolate, and cigarettes. The men were happy for the first time in weeks. But all I could think was that these Americans abandon more food in retreat than we receive in our official rations. How are we supposed to defeat an enemy who considers such abundance routine? The propaganda tells us we are winning, but the evidence before my eyes tells a different story entirely." Letters like Wagner's, intercepted by Allied intelligence or recovered after the war, revealed the psychological impact of supply discoveries. German soldiers had been conditioned to accept hardship as necessary sacrifice for victory, but confronting enemy abundance on this scale made sacrifice seem futile rather than noble. If the enemy could afford to abandon supplies that German forces would fight to protect, what did that say about the war's likely outcome? The impact extended to the officer corps' strategic thinking. General der Panzertruppenhassel von Manteuffel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, submitted a confidential report to Field Marshal Model on December 26. The report's language was carefully diplomatic, but its conclusions unmistakable. Captured American supplies confirm intelligence assessments regarding enemy industrial capacity. Our forces cannot achieve strategic objectives against opponent possessing such material superiority. Tactical victories remain possible, but strategic success requires resource parity we cannot achieve. Von Manteuffel's assessment represented remarkable honesty from a senior German commander in late 1944, admitting that material factors made strategic victory impossible. Contradicted ideologies, emphasis on willpower and fighting spirit as decisive factors, but the evidence from supply depots made denial impossible for officers confronting reality rather than propaganda. The Battle of the Bulge officially ended on January 25, 1945. Though German forces had recognized the offensive's failure weeks earlier, the American supply depots discovered during those 6 weeks of combat became a reference point for understanding why Germany had lost not just this battle but the war itself. The material evidence proved what statistics and intelligence assessments had suggested. Industrial capacity had become modern warfare's decisive factor, rendering traditional military virtues insufficient for victory. Final German casualty figures for the Ardennes offensive documented approximately 67,000 casualties, 100,000 wounded, and over 30,000 captured. Equipment losses included nearly 800 tanks and assault guns, 1,000 aircraft, and thousands of vehicles. These losses were irreplaceable given Germany's collapsing industrial capacity and fuel shortages. American casualties were severe, approximately 19,000 casualties, 47,000 wounded, 23,000 captured, but American industrial capacity could replace these losses and continue offensive operations without pause. General Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, overall commander of German forces in the West, submitted his final assessment of the offensive to OKW headquarters on January 28, 1945. The report, captured after the war, contained unusually frank analysis. The operation confirmed what captured American supplies revealed. We face an opponent whose industrial capacity renders conventional military resistance futile. American material superiority exceeds ratios where tactical skill provides meaningful compensation. Victory requires either industrial parity or enemy political collapse, neither of which appears achievable. Von Rundstedt's assessment represented remarkable honesty from Germany's senior Western commander. He was effectively stating that continued resistance was militarily pointless, though political considerations prevented him from recommending surrender. The captured supply depots had provided the evidence, making this conclusion inescapable for commanders willing to face reality rather than ideology. Intelligence summaries compiled by foreign armies West in February 1945 attempted to quantify the industrial disparity that supply discoveries had revealed. American industrial production exceeded German production by factors of 3-to-1 in steel, 5-to-1 in aluminum, 4-to-1 in military vehicles, and 3-to-1 in aircraft. But raw production figures understated the true disparity. American industry was simultaneously supplying multiple theaters while German industry struggled to support single Operations. The petroleum comparison proved most devastating. American petroleum production in 1944 exceeded 5 million barrels daily. German synthetic fuel production peaked at approximately 180,000 barrels daily before declining under Allied bombing to just 50,000 barrels daily by early 1945. American petroleum capacity exceeded German capacity by ratios approaching 100-1. Fuel in captured American depots, abandoned as routine losses, represented more petroleum than Germany's entire monthly production capacity by war's end. Post-war interrogations of German commanders revealed that the supply depot discoveries had profoundly affected their strategic assessments. General der Panzertruppen Heinrich E. captured in September 1944, but informed of Ardennes results during imprisonment, stated in interrogation, "When I learned that German forces had captured vast American supplies, yet still failed due to logistics problems, I understood the war was truly lost. If capturing enemy supplies didn't solve our supply crisis, nothing could." American industrial capacity had made German victory mathematically impossible. The psychological impact extended to ordinary German soldiers. Letters and diaries recovered after the war revealed that supply discoveries, rather than bolstering morale through captured material, often induced despair by revealing the scale of enemy superiority. Soldiers who had believed propaganda about German industrial achievement confronted evidence that America's routine logistics exceeded Germany's maximum capacity. Jeff Reiter, Ernst Bauer, an infantryman with the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, wrote in late January 1945, "We captured American supplies that seemed like treasure to us: food, cigarettes, medicine, clothing, but the Americans just abandoned this material and kept fighting as if losing it meant nothing. That's when I realized we couldn't win. An enemy that treats such abundance as expendable possesses resources we cannot match. How do you defeat an opponent for whom loss of what we consider treasure represents routine cost of operations?" The supply depot discoveries influenced German strategic planning for the war's final months. Though by early 1945 planning had devolved into delaying inevitable defeat rather than seeking victory, staff officers preparing defensive plans recognized that American logistics would support sustained offensive operations regardless of German resistance. Supply interdiction offered no hope, because American redundant logistics could compensate for localized disruptions. The only strategy remaining was inflicting casualties to make continued American advance politically costly. Though militarily decisive, German resistance was impossible. March 1945, as Allied forces crossed the Rhine and penetrated into Germany proper, German units discovered American supply depots on their own soil. These depots, established to support Allied operations in Germany itself, contained material abundance that contradicted German propaganda about the homeland's industrial strength. German civilians, seeing American supplies, began understanding what soldiers had learned months earlier. Their nation had been militarily defeated by industrial forces beyond their capacity to resist. The final accounting of the Ardennes offensive confirmed what supply discoveries had revealed. Germany had expended irreplaceable military resources in an offensive that achieved temporary tactical gains but no strategic advantage. American forces had absorbed losses, replaced them through industrial capacity, and resumed offensive operations without pause. The mathematical inevitability was complete. A nation producing 30% of world industrial output defeated a nation producing 8%. Through simple arithmetic of production capacity applied to warfare. Post-war military analysis by both American and German historians identified the supply depot discoveries as a crucial moment in Wehrmacht morale collapse. Before the Ardennes, German soldiers could rationalize continued resistance through belief in superior tactics, defensive advantages, or eventual Allied political disunity. After the Ardennes, after seeing American abundance firsthand, such rationalizations became impossible for soldiers. Confronting evidence of overwhelming enemy superiority, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, conducting post-war analysis, concluded German military effectiveness depended ultimately on industrial capacity rather than tactical skill or soldier quality. Once Allied bombing reduced German production below minimum operational requirements, defeat became inevitable, regardless of battlefield performance. The supply depot discoveries during the Battle of the Bulge provided German commanders with direct evidence of the industrial disparity determining strategic outcome. Contemporary military historians recognize the supply depot discoveries as revealing the fundamental transformation in warfare's nature during the 20th century. Industrial capacity had become the decisive factor in modern war, with tactical excellence and soldier quality reduced to secondary importance when industrial disparities reached sufficient magnitude. Germany possessed excellent soldiers and tacticians, but industrial inadequacy made these advantages insufficient against enemies who could field abundance as logistics doctrine. Today, the sites where German forces discovered American supply depots in the Ardennes serve as historical landmarks. Plaques and memorials mark locations where German soldiers confronted the industrial reality of modern warfare. These quiet forest locations witnessed not just tactical events but psychological moments when illusions of possible victory collapsed before evidence of impossible industrial disparity. The legacy of these discoveries extends beyond the Battle of the Bulge into broader understanding of modern warfare. Military planners studying the Ardennes campaign recognize that logistics infrastructure, industrial capacity, and supply chain management often determine strategic outcomes more decisively than battlefield tactics or soldier courage. The German soldiers who opened American supply depots in December 1944 weren't just discovering enemy material, they were witnessing the future of warfare where industrial systems overwhelm military systems. The photographs and documents preserved from these supply depot captures show German soldiers amid stacks of American rations, fuel drums, and equipment. Their faces in these images often reveal a mixture of relief at obtaining desperately needed supplies and comprehension of what this abundance signifies. These are men realizing in real time that the war they're fighting has already been decided by factors beyond battlefield control. Modern analysis of logistics in the Battle of the Bulge consistently emphasizes the critical role supply discoveries played in shaping both German tactical options and strategic understanding. The offensive's initial success created opportunities that couldn't be exploited, because fuel shortages immobilized advancing units, captured American supplies temporarily, alleviated these shortages, but simultaneously revealed the impossibility of matching American logistics long-term. The contrast between German and American supply philosophies, so starkly revealed in the Ardennes, influenced post-war military doctrine development. NATO logistics planning emphasized abundance, redundancy, and push systems explicitly informed by studying American success in World War II. Soviet military planning, while different in detail, similarly recognized that modern warfare required industrial-scale logistics infrastructure. The human dimension of these supply depot discoveries remains as important as the strategic implications. German soldiers who had endured years of declining rations, inadequate winter clothing, and chronic shortages suddenly encountered enemy abundance that contradicted everything their experience had taught them about war's hardships. The psychological impact of this contrast, suffering deprivation, while enemies enjoyed abundance, affected morale in ways pure military defeats could not. The testimony of German veterans interviewed decades after the war consistently identifies the Ardennes supply discoveries as transformative moments in their understanding of the conflict. Veterans describe the experience of opening American supply depots as the moment they truly comprehended Germany's strategic situation. Statistical briefings about enemy production capacity remained abstract. Confronting physical evidence of that capacity in abandoned supply depots made it undeniably real. The ethical dimensions of this industrial disparity also merit consideration. German soldiers fighting for a regime responsible for unprecedented atrocities found themselves outmatched by the industrial capacity of democratic nations they had been taught to despise as weak and decadent. The supplies they captured came from societies that, despite their own flaws and contradictions, had mobilized industrial capacity in defense of principles fundamentally opposed to the ideology Germany represented. Material abundance thus became not just military advantage but moral statement about the relative strength of different social systems. The final significance of the Ardennes supply depot discoveries lies in what they revealed about modern total war. Conflicts between industrial nations would be decided by production capacity, resource availability, and logistics infrastructure as much as by battlefield tactics or soldier quality. The Wehrmacht learned this lesson in the forests of Belgium in December 1944, confronting American supply depots that made German victory mathematically impossible, regardless of tactical excellence or fighting spirit. That lesson, purchased at the cost of hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides, remains relevant to understanding warfare in the industrial age and beyond.